Today we are building this sled, which is for decoration only. All it takes is a 1x6x8 and a cedar picket. I'm building this for a reindeer display, although I think my wife wanted more of a Santa Claus sleigh, but I don't want to have to store that. So free plans are in the description below. Let's get to it. Look at the size of that sticker. It is literally an entire sheet of paper. To start, we are going to rip these boards in half so they are easier to cut on the table saw. Rip each board down to 1 3/4 inches so that we have 6 strips of each to work with. We are going to set the cedar boards aside for now and focus on building the frame. Go ahead and set your saw to the 30-degree mark, and we are going to create the runners for underneath. So you will need 2 of these strips, and I like to just draw a line at about the 1/2 inch mark. And then we are going to go ahead and cut each of these. We could do it at the same time. So that it looks something like that. So you still have about a 1/2 inch, and then it goes into that 30-degree mark. Then we're going to go ahead and set our saw to the 45-degree mark, flip our 2 boards over the opposite direction, and you want these miters to match. So go ahead, flip them so it is like this, and do the same thing. Leave about a 1/2 inch of the straight edge. Then our next piece, we're going to go ahead and measure out to 14 inches, and we need 2 of those. The 30-degree angle with the slope, that is actually the front, so that would be the bottom, and your 45-degree angle will face up at the back of the sled. So again, the front is the 30-degree, the back is the 45 facing up. So 12 and 25. Mark the newly found tops of your boards. I am just using a drill that has a countersink bit, and go ahead and countersink these guys into their places, just so that way it doesn't split out the screw when I go to screw them into place. And then that gives it a nice countersink. Looks beautiful. Using an 1.5 inch screw. Beautiful. And then again, just repeat that for all the sides. The only thing we have left to do on the frame is to build the little steery part that goes on the front. I tried to ask Google what the diagram of the names for these things. It was no help at all. So we are going to take this piece here. I am going to measure in about 3.5 inches and make a mark, 3.5 inches, just so that they are the same. And then let's go ahead to 3. Yeah. So 3/4 inch up. So with this guided line, I'm just going to use a stain can, and I'm going to center it best that I think it is. So it's centered into that spot. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw a line around him for both of these. We do not want this to be a perfect half circle. That would look kind of silly. So that is why we are going only up 3/4 inch. So most of your can is going to hang off. And there are my 2 marks right there. And then using that same can, I'm just going to go ahead and set these to be rounded. Not sure, did I mention I cut this to 18 inches? Oh, I may or may not have mentioned that. And that is where it's going to go, right there. So with these lines cut, go ahead and just get them cut out either with a jigsaw, a bandsaw, get them cut out, maybe sand them a bit to smooth them out. Look at the polar bear. It's the abominable snowman. Ah! Okay, so now that this is cut out and done, we are going to go ahead and measure down 5 inches. Another 5er. And just getting him squared away. And then just make sure that it is centered in your piece. And I'm going to go ahead and just use 2 nails for this guy, because these will be covered up with the slats. This will not be. So this will be visible. Again, I'm going to paint this base. First off, there's too much crap over here now. So go ahead and get your slats lined up on the top there, not held down by anything. And you can try to hold this down and trace your line with a string and a pencil. I had a season pass for the struggle bus with that. So I actually just went outside. I found a giant tub. So go ahead, just get that centered. If you had like a 5-gallon bucket, that would work as well. I actually don't own any 5-gallon buckets. I got rid of them all because I don't like 5-gallon buckets. That's what I was afraid of. Okay, and all of these are going to move around the whole freaking time. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, there is one. Hey! This is out of frame. I apologize, but it cannot be in frame right now. Okay. All right, so again, now we are just going to trim both of these off. So before I actually start cutting these out, I am going to go ahead and just paint the bottom, just that way it has some extra time to dry while I get my life together and I cut these out. So I am just spray painting this red. I'm just going to go outside to knock her out. As you guys begin to cut these curves in the top and bottom, it's a good idea to think about what finish you wanted to use for this top. You can just leave it alone and not do anything to it, and it'll be just fine outside. It's cedar. Or you could go ahead and give it a clear coat so it holds that more reddish tint. If yours aren't as red, like mine are pretty sun faded, you can go ahead and use just a tinted stain like Early American, or if you want to go like darker with an espresso, you could stain it a darker color. Or you have the option to paint them. If you want to paint them white or green or something to kind of match Christmas, you could do that too. The only recommendation I would give you is to go ahead and sand off these little cedar stringy pieces, so that way it is more flat and it doesn't look as rough, unless you want to try to keep that rustic look. With staining it, those little bits are going to be fine. If you're painting it, it is going to kind of make it look messy. All right, so now just kind of set these on here. They're still tacky, so we'll figure it out though, you know, that's okay. And then the last thing we have to do is just fire nails into these to hold them in place. And there you have it, a completed sled. Mine is still a little tacky, so I'm not going to hold it by a lot. But there she is. You would definitely know the next day if I wanted to go tag a train car or something.